Hey everyone, and welcome back to Ideanthro. Now today, we're continuing our series looking at different types of bioretention systems. And today, we're looking at large bioretention systems. So, look, it's fairly obvious from the name that we're talking about the stuff at the bigger end of the spectrum. But a really relevant question would be, look, why are these different to precinct scale systems? It's a good question. The reason that I differentiate between precinct scale systems and larger bioretention systems is that at a certain point in bioretention design, because of the amount of water that you've got coming into the system, the flows, you end up with some extra risks, particularly around erosion and how we distribute water evenly across the systems. And we have to do a few things to how we change how we design them. And then that has flow-on effects for maintenance, because larger bioretention systems end up a bit more complex with a bit more stuff to maintain. So from a maintenance point of view, you get some economies of scale in terms of, well, we only have to visit one site, we only have to do setup at one site, but you also get some added complications because you have some extra stuff to look after. So in this episode, we're going to be looking at two larger bioretention systems. The first one here is going to be one designed to take into account the fact that the system is larger and it has some of those extra complexities to it, and we'll talk through what those are. And then the second system that we look at is a system designed much more like a precinct scale system, but just a very big one. And we'll look at what that means for how that system does. So I'll spin the camera around and we'll take you for a bit of a journey. So the first thing you'll notice with large bioretention systems is you'll often find they have a sediment pond like this, or some kind of underground sediment storage system with an ability to split the flows out. So this is doing two things. One, it is capturing sediment so it doesn't end up on the bioretention system, typically the coarser sediment, which would fill those systems up. And secondly, it's splitting the flows out. So you only get the smaller design flows that you want the bioretention system to treat. You only get those smaller flows going to the bioretention, and the rest, the larger flows, go over the weir. So you can see the weir just kind of center of screen in the background there, and you can't see it here, but to the right, it's pretty hidden, and it's actually a bit of a problem. There are three culverts over in that direction there, which take the water from this sediment pond into the bioretention systems. Now, so one of the things when it comes to maintenance is obviously this is an extra part of the system and an extra thing to maintain. So that does mean being a little bit more cost. This particular basin, those three culverts, which you can't see, clogged up for quite a period of time, and we're actually stopping flows getting to the bioretention systems. I haven't checked today, they might be clogged up again. There's certainly a lot of growth there, but it's something that you have to check out when you have a larger bioretention system. So what we're going to do now is we're going to walk down to the three cells. So in this case, this large bioretention system is about 2,500, 3,000 square meters of bioretention filter media. And if you look at a lot of the guidance out there, like for example the guidance published by Healthy Waterways, you'll see that once you get to about 800 square meters of filter media is where they start to recommend that you need to add these extra features on, like the sediment basin that we looked at, and like splitting the bioretention system itself out into a series of smaller cells. So this particular basin has three cells. I think they might be a bit over the 800 square meter mark. They might be pushing up towards 1,000 to get that 3,000 square meters that I mentioned. But we'll have a look at each of those if I don't get myself thoroughly lost getting back to them, because you can see it's pretty overgrown here. So walking past the sediment basin, it's over on the left there. In a second, we'll be walking over the top of the culverts as they flow from the sediment basin over that way, through kind of underneath us here. Underneath us here in a second. And you can see just coming into shot here is the first of these bioretention cells. Now don't get me wrong, these systems aren't perfect, and there's a few reasons for that. Of the three cells, the two end ones got some dramas. The middle cell is actually pretty good still. And that's a lot of that. Look, there's various reasons for that. Some of it is mismanagement, right? Some of it's some design challenges and that sort of thing. So we can see here, we have an inlet. So one of the three culverts that we talked about comes through here into the system. We've got this little scour pad, and then it flows out over this, this area here. If we keep walking around the system, we'll do a quick trip around and we'll see each of the three cells and the outlet pits. So now what we're walking along is the top of cell 1, heading towards cell 2, which you can see just starting to appear here. So you can see one of the problems with this first cell is that it's got plenty of trees in it, but the lower vegetation is really quite bare, and as a result we've just got some kind of grassy species invading in off the edges. It's still draining, it's probably still being really functional, right? But if you looked at the design plans of this, you would see different species spec'd for the understory stuff, and you might start to question what was going on. So here we are at cell 2. So you can see a bund in the center there, separating the two cells. And we come around here, and again, straight underneath me is the culvert from pipe number 2. And then you can see into here, again, we've got trees at the front end of the system. We've got a few weeds at the front. Now that's not uncommon because the weeds come in on the stormwater. But once you get, what is that, 5-6 meters in, there's a whole bunch of lomandras and really thick vegetation in there. And we'll see that better when we come back around the bottom end of this system. So we'll keep going on our walk. We've got some lovely big lomandras here. And it doesn't really surprise me that it's the system with the lomandras that have held on the best. For anyone who's wondering and doesn't have as much experience with plant ID, this is a lomandra, and we'll do another episode in the future about plant ID and about lomandras and that sort of thing. So, just keeping on heading around here, walking past my camera gear, and we're approaching the inlet to the third and final cell, which we have here, like so. There's another inlet pad. Again, this system's similar. We've got the trees at the front. We do have plenty of vegetation in it, but it's weedy grass that has come running in here. Until about 18 months ago, this cell was beautifully vegetated through the understory with Imperator cylindrica. And then that's no longer there. I believe it was a case of accidental mismanagement, and that was removed by accident, and then it just got overran by this stuff, which is unfortunate. I'm not 100% sure that's what happened, but I happened to visit this system while the Imperator was there, and then not long after, and based on my observations, I think that's what happened. Anyway, a little bit unfortunate, but so be it. So continuing on around here, what you can see coming into shot now is the outlet pit for this third cell. So each of these systems has got these big outlet pits here, which collect any excess overflows from the system, and the underdrains also connect back into these pits here, and then the water flows from here out or spin around out underneath the road and so on. As we walk around, you'll see a few of these little stations here. That was because when this system was first set up, it was set up to allow the university to study the systems, so there's the ability to monitor, using automated equipment, the performance of these systems, which is pretty cool, because you can't, it's a little bit challenging to, if you've got a system already installed that wasn't designed for it, it's a little bit challenging to set up monitoring equipment on a system, because there's a few nuances of how you monitor the flow and that sort of thing. So I mentioned the Imperator cylindrica in this cell before. So the stuff in the foreground here, which is kind of green and a bit of brown tinge to it's the Imperator, and then the stuff that's totally green further into the background is the invasive species that came in after the Imperator suffered for whatever reason. So continuing along here, another one of those monitoring huts. Now, so just in shot there, that's the bund between cells 2 and 3, and now cell 2 is coming into shot here. You can see it's really well vegetated with primarily lomandras, but also some garnia in there, and the outlet pit is roughly here. We can't really see it, and I'm not going for a wade in the lomandra right this second. We'll probably do that later today. So continuing around, another thing you'll spot here, and this is a good example of it, each of these cells here, because it was a bit of a test case, was planted out with different species, and it was also planted with trees at the front end and then lower growing species towards the back. So it's a good test case, shows how different, in a very similar environment, how it changes what happens. But you'll also notice, so the trees in the background there, well, the ones that are planted, but we've also got these other tree species popping up around here. We notice this pretty commonly in all sorts of bioretention systems. Given long enough, things like acacias will come up from seed and start to repopulate the area. We'll do another video about that in the future and the, I think, potential lots of benefits from that. Now we're coming back to cell 3. You can see the outlet pit here, and we'll continue on back around like so, and we'll just get back up to the top of cell 1 so you can kind of see how this all fits together. So again, you can see here the vegetation closest to me in this cell, in this case, is Phacinia nodosa, and that was what was planted in this cell. And you come around here, we find where there were once some bare patches and grasses and that sort of thing have invaded from the end. And it's a really good demonstration of how when you have the desirable vegetation in there, it really does help to outcompete the weeds. But if you get open space, if you get sun getting in, it allows seeds that get in there to germinate. It allows species to run in from the batters, and you get way more weed problems. So keeping that dense vegetated cover is a real key to reducing long-term maintenance. And so we're just wandering back up past here, past the front of cell 1. You might be able to see the inlet coming into shot, or we might have a little bit too much shadow. Never mind. And we'll just scoot through here, and there's the inlet. So we've done a lap of those systems. So given, you know, I haven't been walking super slow here, so you can start to get an idea of the scale of this, this basin. So I'll just put down my recording equipment, which is there, and spin this back around. Cool, okay, so that was the first system, the first of the large systems that we're going to look at in this episode. Next we'll be looking at a large system that hasn't been split up into separate cells like this one has, and we'll just look at what that looks like. Okay, cool. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in a second at that larger system. Cool, see ya. And here we are at the larger system that hasn't been split up into cells. So with this style of system, it hasn't been split up, there's a few main risks, and that's what we're going to talk about here. So there's two, you know, probably when you think about it, three main risks that you can get with this. So number one is, and you can see this system here, so it's bordered by the trees on one side there, kind of the path and the grass on that side, and you can see it extending away from me. So this system is about 2,000 square meters. So risk number one is we've got flows coming in simply at this one point here from this head wall down in there. And so obviously rainfall events come in different sizes, right? You get small ones, you get big ones. And in a small rainfall event, that water will start to run out across the surface, and it'll run out a little bit, but the media is really quite sandy and quite porous. And so it'll drain in. So you can get this situation where the plants at the front of the system are getting wet and getting more water more regularly than the plants at the back, and are probably going to be healthier and happier. And then the plants down the other end can end up really water stressed, and you can end up with this gradient of plant health. And of course, if you've got unhealthy plants at one end that are a bit water stressed, you've got more chance of maybe weeds getting in there and getting established, and then they can march back up to this end and so on and so forth. So this is one reason why large systems like this that aren't split out into individual cells can be a problem. Now you can combat that a little bit. Maybe you could have water coming in from multiple points, so you could have some kind of distribution weir running along one end, one edge, or this sort of thing to more evenly distribute water. But it's something to be aware of, and that's one of the reasons why splitting systems up into cells is favoured. Now problem number two is related to this single inlet problem, and to, you know, the fact that rainfall events come in different sizes. If you have a big system like this that's not split into cells and is still online to the main flood flow, then you can have big issues with scour. Now this system, thankfully, is offline. So if you look past the trees there, you'll see there's a big main rock-lined channel. The rock's not particularly attractive, but a big main rock-lined channel there for the main flood flow to come down. And then it's just a relatively smaller flow that's split off here via the head wall and into this system. If that wasn't the case, and if this was on the main channel, then obviously you've got a big risk of scour with a system this big. And that risk gets bigger the bigger the catchment gets, which of course correlates to the bigger system. So in general terms, a larger system is more likely to have scour unless you're doing sensible things like splitting it out into cells, which of course means that those big rainfall events are, well, either like the first system we looked at, they're split at the sediment pond and high flows just bypass the bioretention cells, Or if for some reason you don't have a bypass and it's split into cells, at least then the flows are being split in 2 or 3 or 4 and going in at a few different points, which will give you a bit of resilience against erosion and that sort of thing. Although of course it's ideal, just like in this situation and like in the first basin, just to split the big flows off around the basin altogether. And then the third risk. Oh yeah, the third risk is about construction, right? So bioretention systems, so we haven't touched on this yet in these videos, but bioretention systems obviously are built up in these layers with the pipes and gravel at the bottom, then a sand, and then the filter media on top. So when it comes to construction, you've got a bit of a risk because the filter media and the sand and that sort of thing aren't super structurally solid. If you drive machinery all over the top of the system while you're building it, you're bound to crush the under drainage pipes at the bottom and block it up and, you know, really screw the system up from day one. So it's best to be able to not drive machinery on the system. And if you've got a small system, that's fine because you can use an excavator or something and drop media into it from the edge or that sort of thing. Or if it's really small, you can effectively use hand tools or, you know, maybe, and that sort of thing. But when you get up to these big systems, the system can be so wide like this one that you physically can't access it from either edge, right? And so in which case you're going to have to build the system from within it. And you're going to start to have dramas with how you construct the system without driving over bits you've already constructed. It can be done, but it's more work because what you might find is that instead of, if it was a smaller system, you'd put in all the pipes through the whole system, and then you'd put in all the gravel through the whole system, then all the sand through the whole system, then all the filter media. Instead, in a bigger system like this, you might then start putting in the pipes, the gravel, the sand, and the filter media in this corner, and then the pipes, the sand, and the filter media in the next, say, 10 meters of the system, and then the pipes. And you see what I'm saying here? You're building out gradually through the system, which is a lot more work. You're switching back and forth between what you're laying. You can't just take a nice, clean level every time you finish each layer, and so on and so forth. So that's another problem with this larger stuff. And it all leads back to exactly why best practice design when you're going up to these larger systems is to break them out into cells like the first system we looked at. So sweet, that's it for larger bioretention systems. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope you found it interesting. We are, of course, Ideanthro, and you can find us at ideanthro.com. You can sign up for our mailing list there. The sign up is on the bottom of the front page. You can also find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Ideanthro, and you can find us at YouTube where we post all our videos. You can subscribe there. There's different playlists and all of this sort of thing. So one final thought, if there is stuff that you are curious about, things you want to know, questions you've always had about water sensitive urban design or bioretention systems or that sort of thing, drop us a line. We'd love to hear them because we would love to attempt to answer them for you and to help you out. So use any of the means we just talked about. Use the contact details of the website or the Facebook page or comments on YouTube to drop us a line, and we'll do our best to answer your questions if we can. Sweet. Thanks for tuning in, but until next time, see you later.